Hello students, my name is Sunday. I'm here today to take us on some top NECO government past questions. Number one, the primary function of a constitution is to A. Determine the ruling party, B. Guarantee individual freedom, C. Establish a national religion, D. Fix prices of commodities, E. Limit foreign relations. From the question stated the primary. The word primary means the major, the most important function. From that statement, the most correct answer here is to guarantee individual freedom. B is the correct option. Number two, the principle of separation of powers was popularized by who? M.Boye, Karl Marx, Montesquieu, Plato, Aristotle. The correct answer here is C. Charles Baron de Montesquieu was the one that popularized separation of power. Though M.Boye also wrote about it, Karl Marx talked about mode of production, but the person that popularized separation of power is Charles Baron de Montesquieu. 3. Bicameral legislature refers to a single chamber legislature, a military rule, 2 legislative chambers, 2-party system, decentralized authority. By your understanding and the background, when we say by, the word by means 2 chambers, 2 axes of law making. So the most correct answer here is letter C, 2 legislative chambers, C. Number 4, delegated legislation is made by, I believe you have understanding of delegated legislation, which means when another agency or another organ of government makes law on behalf of the legislature. So delegated legislation is made by A, the judiciary, the traditional rulers, individuals, appointed bodies under the powers given by parliament, and E, religious institutions. Yes, judiciary can make law on behalf of legislature, but the most correct answer in this place is D, appointed bodies under the powers given by the parliament. In other words, when the legislature, also known as parliament, gives responsibility or give powers to other organ of government or agency of government to make laws on his behalf, but such laws will be supervised by the legislature. So the most correct answer here is letter D, appointed bodies under powers given by the parliament. The next question, I hope you're enjoying your class. The next question, a bill becomes law when it is, you know that in the legislative organ, what they pass is a bill, not actually law. And this bill has to pass through several stages, several phases to become law. From the first stage to the second stage, to the committee stage, to the report stage, to the third stage, and finally to the assent stage where the president will sign it. So in this case, a bill becomes law when it is A, published in a newspaper, B, signed by the Chief Justice, C, approved by the President, D, passed by the Judiciary, E, debated on the television. From what I just summarized to you now about the process of passing a bill into law, the answer here is approved by the President. We call it assent of the President, approval of the President. That's what turned a bill to become what? A law. Let's look at the next question. The judiciary performs the function of, judiciary is one of the 3 organs of government, while legislature makes or enact laws, the executive enforce or implement laws, judiciary interpret, administer, explain, or define laws. So let's see our correct answer from this question. The judiciary performs the function of A, legislation, that is the work of legislature. B, policy formulation, that is the work of executive. C, execution of laws, that's also the work of executive. D, interpretation of laws. And E, budgeting. Budgeting is also work of what? The executive. So the most correct answer here is interpretation of laws, D. The next question. The concept of rule of law implies you have understanding, a background about rule of law. Rule of law has to do with supremacy of the law, the supremacy of the constitution. So let's see what it's talking about here. A, dictatorship. B, obedience to the president. C, supremacy of law. D, one-party state. E, loyalty to rulers. From this option, from what intro I just gave to you, the answer is C, supremacy of the law. That is the Constitution. Okay? We'll move on to the next question. A unitary state or a unitary system of government is best suited for, remember, the unitary system means concentration of political power in one authority, in one single level of government. So this kind of system suits what? A, large state with many ethnic groups. B, society with diverse culture. C, homogeneous society. D, federal states. E, capitalist states. The option E is just like a distraction to you. But option A and B is talking about a federal system, a federal state. So A, B, C are similar. A, B, D are similar. And the most correct answer here is homogeneous society. And homogeneous society is a society where there's common ancestry, common history, common culture. Everything is common to the people over there. And it's also a smaller state. So such a state will operate a unitary system of government. So your answer here is option C, homogeneous societies. The next question. The process of removing an elected official through a vote is called A, impeachment. B, expulsion. C, dissolution. D, recall. E, resignation. Now, let's look at this option. Very, very interesting. The process of removing an elected official through a vote. Now, the elected official they're talking about in this case is possibly the member of the House, the members of the Parliament, or the member of the legislature. Okay? To remove such a member, we'll have what they call a recall. A recall is a process whereby the members of the constituency of such representative wrote a letter or write a letter to the Senate President or the Speaker of the House demanding the withdrawal of their mandate, of their support for their representative. And by so doing, they will recall such person from the House, withdrawing their support. Okay? Impeachment could also mean a removal, but impeachment is peculiar to only the office of the governor and the president, who can be impeached if it's the governor by the House of Assembly, and if it's the president by the National Assembly. But in this case, we are talking about elected official, is particularly talking about a recall of a member of either the lower house as of representative or upper house as of Senate. Okay? Let's look at the next question. I hope you're enjoying this class. Please subscribe to this channel for more. All right? The organ of government responsible for policy implementation is the, if you have been following me, if you notice, I think question number 7 or 8 thereabout, we'll talk about the organs of government, judiciary, and the functions they performed. And this statement, policy implementation, also came out in that particular question earlier on. So the organ of government that implements government policy, that make and implement government policy, is the executive. Executive makes and implements government policy. Legislature approve government policy. Judiciary is there to interpret the law. So the answer here is option A, the executive. Let's see the next question. A totalitarian government is characterized by, from the word total. Total means everything. Huh? A totalitarian is similar to a dictatorship. It's like an extreme leader, a leader without limited authority. Okay? So, a totalitarian government is characterized by A, multi-party democracy, unlimited power, rule of law, separation of powers, federalism. From the explanation I just gave, the answer is B, unlimited power. A totalitarian has unlimited power. It can do and undo. It's a dictator. Okay? Let's see the next question. The process by which citizens influence governmental decision is: citizens are expected to be part and parcel of the ruling of the government. They should have a say on how government rules them. And that's what we call democracy. So this process of doing that, what do we call it? A, legislation. B, participation. C, suppression. D, appointment. E, indoctrination. The correct answer to this question is participation. That's what we call political participation. Remember, in a democracy, particularly in direct democracy, we are all participating in politics. We are all participating in government, directly or indirectly. So participation, that is the only way the citizen can influence decisions of the government. Let's see the next question. Pressure groups differ from political parties because they. Now, with your background understanding on these two concepts, the pressure groups, they are interest groups that the only purpose they come together is to influence government decisions to favor their members. Okay? While political party, the main aim is to contest for election and win the election, thereby controlling government apparatus. So let's see what differs two of them, these two concepts, pressure groups and political party. A, because they do not see political power, that cannot be said like that. Okay, pressure group, of course. B, operate in secret. How? C, illegal. No. D, are formed by civil servant. No. E, have no leadership. The answer is this. Pressure group is different from political party because they do not seek for political office. They don't contest for election. They only influence government decision. So the most correct answer here is option A. Let's see the next question. I hope you're enjoying the class. Please subscribe to this channel for more. 14, here. Which of the following is a feature of a federal system? In number 3 or number 4 questions we treated earlier, I did a little intro to federal system of government. Okay? So which of these is a feature, a characteristic of what? A federal system. A, unicameral legislature. B, fusion of power. C, concentration of power. D, division of power. And E, military dominance. This E is just a distraction for you. Unicameral legislature is suitable for a unitary system of government. That was question number 3 or 4 we answered earlier. Okay? Fusion of power is under parliamentary system of government. Okay? And concentration of power is also what? The definition of unitary system of government. So the correct answer here is division of power. Because federalism is all about formal division of governmental powers between the central government and the component units. So the correct answer here is division of power, option D. Let's see the next question. Public opinion is best measured through, in other words, what is the best way to measure the public opinion of a society? A, opinion polls. B, strikes. C, revolt. D, media censorship. E, rumors. The correct answer here, clearly stated, is opinion polls, option A. Okay? Let's see the next question as we progress. The act of cancelling the citizenship of a person is. Now, you may be surprised to say, how can you cancel citizenship of somebody? Okay? Which means originally the person was actually not a citizen of that state. Such citizen was acquired, not by right, not by birth, but was acquired. So if you acquire it, can also be what? Be cancelled. So which type of citizen can be cancelled? Expatriation, deportation, revocation, denaturalization, and nationalization. The answer here is what? Denaturalization, Why? Naturalization is a means by which somebody acquires the citizenship of a country. Perhaps you have stayed for a particular period of time, depending on what is the constitutional requirement of that country. Like Nigeria is 15 years. If you are staying 15 years, you can apply to be naturalized to become a citizen of Nigeria. So if you are caught, whether in a crime against the state or whatsoever it is, that such citizenship can be denounced, can be removed, can be cancelled. And that's what they call it, denaturalization. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. In a parliamentary system, the head of state is, I mentioned this in about 2 or 3 questions earlier. When we talk about parliamentary system of government, we talk about a system where you have 2 leaders. One is the head of state, the other is the head of government. The head of state is the ceremonial head, ceremonial president, while the head of government is the prime minister. Okay? So in a parliamentary system, from what I just explained now, the head of state is who? Is the ceremonial president. So the correct option here is option B, the president. Remember, a ceremonial president is different from what? An executive president. We'll discuss that later on when we discuss system of government. Right? Let's look at the next question. The tenure of a senator in Nigeria is 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 3 years. This should be a bonus for you. It's a bonus question. Knowing that periodically we conduct what? Parliamentary and presidential election together in Nigeria every 4 years. The parliamentary and the presidential election take place every 4 years. So the answer is option B as we move on to the next question. Okay? An electoral commission ensures, in other words, what is the primary duty, the primary responsibility of an electoral commission? A, tax collection. You and I know that cannot be correct because it has nothing to do with that. Government spending, free and fair elections, foreign diplomacy, cabinet appointment. This is also another bonus question to you. The most correct answer here is C. It ensures the conduct of a free and fair election. Okay? Another question, one major reason for military intervention in Nigerian politics is, in other words, can you just mention any one of many reasons that were claimed by the military for intervening in Nigerian politics? Okay? High voter turnout, how can that be? B, civilian supremacy, how? C, electoral fraud. D, independence agitation. E, federal structure. The most correct answer here is what? Electoral fraud. Subsequent, all our past civilian governments have found it so difficult to conduct a free and fair election. And most of the time that the military government has intervened in our politics, they have hung on this particular weakness of the civilian government to produce a free and fair election. Electoral fraud. That is the reason. Option C. Let's see the next question. Political socialization involves, you have an idea of what they call political culture and political socialization. Culture are the way you acquire your orientation, your belief system. And socialization is a platform of transmitting it from one generation to another. Okay? So what is political socialization? What's it involving? What is it talking about? Cultural exchange, acquiring political values, economic empowerment, judiciary appointment, civil unrest. The correct answer is acquiring political values, because political socialization means transmission of political culture from one generation to another generation. So the process of acquiring political values, that's what they call political socialization. So the correct option here is option B. Option B. Okay? Let's see the next question. Citizenship by naturalization requires, we just answer a question similar to this. That's to tell you that sometimes the examiner, they repeat questions in different ways. Okay? If you notice about number 17 or 18 thereabout, we answer a question that's similar to this, talking about naturalization. So citizenship by naturalization requires, I also explained that one. Let's see. maybe for my previous explanation, you can just pick your answer direct. A, birth in the country. Long-term residence and application. C, descent from a citizen. D, military service and political appointment. From what I explained earlier in the previous question, the answer is what? Long-term residence and application. I said earlier that in Nigerian case, different countries have different number of years. Okay. Now in UK, in US, once I've stayed up to 5 years, you can apply for residence permit. And when you go and stay later for a longer year, you can apply for citizenship. Or in Nigeria here, you stay 15 years and afterwards, you can apply for citizenship. Long-term residence and application. The correct option is B. Okay, so let's see the next question. A referendum is used to, now, I believe you know the meaning of referendum. Referendum is synonymous to plebiscite. It is a process of voting yes or no, voting for or against an action, a decision, or a policy of the government. Okay? So what is referendum here? Elect a president, select governors, decide on major national issues, remove ministers, select judges. The correct answer is letter C. Decide on major national issues. Referendum. Okay? Let's see the next question as we progress. One advantage of democracy is one advantage. Well, how many advantages of democracy? But any of these 5 is one of them. It's one of those many advantages. A, absolute power, suppression of dissent, protection of human rights, closure of opposition, military dominance. You notice that A, D, E, they are direct opposites of democracy. Has nothing to do with democracy. Okay? So the most correct answer here is protection of human rights. A democratic government guarantees fundamental human rights of the citizens. Okay? Let's see the next question. The Nigeria Independence Constitution came into effect in, you know that the Independent Constitution was as a result of the conferences that took place in London, 1957 and 1958. Okay? And then we had the Governor General then as James Robertson. Okay? And eventually, the Independent Constitution was released in 1960 that granted us independence October 1st. And in that Constitution, it was pronounced that the Governor General, who then was Nnamdi Azikiwe, was the representative of the British Queen as the head of state. So the Independent Constitution came to effect in 1960, while the Republican Constitution came to effect in 1963. So the correct answer here is 1960. Let's see the next question. I hope you're enjoying this discussion. Please subscribe to this channel to get more. The main objective of the African Union, AU. I hope you know that AU replaced OAU. Before now, we have OAU. Until enter into the new millennium, 2000, that African leaders agreed to transform OAU to AU, African Union. So the main objective of African Union is to do what? What is the purpose? What is the main objective? A, support military government, divide Africa into regions, promote unity and development, elect African leaders, manage refugee camp. Very easy and direct. An option for you. Promote unity and development. Okay? So there are some of your questions that are just simple and direct. That once you see the option, you quickly pick it without stress. Let's go on. The next question. One major role of opposition parties is to, in any civilian democratic ruling government, there's always room for opposition party. So why do we have opposition party? Huh? A, to create instability, to oppose every bill, to criticize government constructively, to cause division, to prevent election. Some of them are decent. They have nothing to do with this particular question. So the most correct answer here is to criticize the government constructively. In other words, being objective with their criticism. In other words, showing alternative ways, alternative policies that government could have done to make life better for the people. So criticize government constructively. Option C is the correct answer. Let's see the next question as we progress. Franchise is best defined as, what is franchise? Franchise is the right to vote and be voted for. And another name for franchise is suffrage. So from this place, how can we best define it? Electoral violence, right to vote, C, judiciary. I think the option is not complete in this place. Maybe there's a cutoff somewhere. The D option and E is not here. Okay, D, constitutional amendment, and E, economic autonomy. I think the best answer here is right to vote, from the meaning I just gave to franchise, which means the right to vote and be voted for. Okay, let's progress to the next question. The symbol of authority in the legislature is the dash. Constitution, gavel, mace, rope, title. There is, if you notice, there's an object called mace, M-A-C-E, not mace as the one you eat, M-A-C-E. There's an object, okay, that is always being carried when the Senate, if you have seen them on the television before, on the news, when the Senate president is being moved, is coming in for a meeting, there will be somebody, the bearer, the sergeant, that will carry this mace, you know, and when this mace gets to the house, it will be lying down in front of the meeting of the chamber, right in the front of the chamber where you have the officer seated. It is a sign of authority. When this mace is not present in a legislative assembly, whatever being discussed is null and void. It's very important to have mace in a legislative assembly. It's a symbol of authority. Okay? As we progress. Which of the following can dissolve a parliament in a parliamentary system? Wow. Now, in a parliament can have a recess, okay? And they can also have a dissolution, which is when they have come to the end of their session. If you have seen one of our videos, one of the questions we treated before now on this channel, where we talk about dissolution and prorogation and what have you, okay? The legislature, they have their tenure ending, and they also have their session ending, okay? The tenure ending is after they must have finished their tenure, if it's 4 years or 2 years, whatever the number of years recommended. When they are done with that, the house will be dissolved. And once the house is dissolved, dissolution, there will be a new general election to recompose the house. That is different from the end of a session. The end of a session is just like they are done for this particular legislative year, and they have gone for vacation to resume the next legislative year. But the one we are talking about here is dissolve. So who can dissolve a parliamentary system that will lead to what? A general election. Is it the judiciary, the monarch or president, the citizens, the armed forces, the prime minister? The answer is the monarch or the president. B, why are they saying monarch or president? This is so in case the government or the country is operating a monarchical system of government, okay, where the king, like we have in England, where the king will come and address the parliament at the close of their tenure for a new general election to take place. And if it's a place like Nigeria, where we operate a presidential system of government, the president will give what? The dissolution of the house so that a new general election can take place. All right, let's go. Let's see on the next question. The authority of government is derived from, how does government get its authority? Where did it get its authority from? The authority the government has to control, to direct the affairs of the state. Where did it get it from? Is it from public support, international treaties? Let's see, there's a cutoff here. C, international treaty, traditional rulers, foreign powers, religious leaders. The most correct answer here is, I think it's option A. That's talking about from the public support. The public support, governmental terms for this is called legitimacy. The legitimacy, the mandate. The mandate the people, the legitimacy the people gives to the government, gave government authority to control the affairs of the people. Let's see the next question. So far, I hope you're enjoying this class. I will advise that you subscribe to this channel so that you can get more of this and even our lectures. Anyway, which arm of government interprets law? This question is coming out the third time in this particular session. The third time. That is to tell you that the examiner, either WAEC or NECO, they do repetition of questions. Sometimes they twist it. Sometimes they turn the options to question, and sometimes the question to option. We have seen interpret as part of options in the previous question we answered earlier today. Now we are seeing it as a question now. Which arm? Straightforward. You don't need to waste your time on this. Judiciary. Why? Executive enforce or implement the law, like I said earlier. Legislature makes and enacts the law, like I said earlier, and judiciary interprets the law. Cabinet is made up of the ministers that make up the executive. Okay? The electorate are the people. So the correct answer here is the judiciary. The principle of collective responsibility is associated with, when we talk about responsibility, we are talking about the responsibility of the ministers. There are two responsibilities. We have individual responsibility, and we also have what? Collective responsibilities. If you say individual responsibility, this is associated with presidential system of government, where the president appoints his ministers and can also dissolve them at any time. He can hire and fire. But in a collective responsibility, this is associated with parliamentary system of government, where all the ministers and the minister are collectively responsible for the good or the bad of their policies and their actions. Okay? If one fails, all of them have failed. If one does well, all of them have done well. So, what is the answer in this play? The correct answer from what I just explained to you is option B, parliamentary system of government. Okay, let's see the next question. Indirect rule was first introduced in Nigeria by, of course, you know that indirect rule took place under the British colonial administration in Nigeria, and the master of British colonialism in Nigeria was who? Lord Frederick Lugard. Lord Frederick Lugard. He was the one that introduced indirect rule system in Nigeria as a means of using traditional rulers to govern the people. Using traditional rulers to govern the people. Okay, that is indirect rule. And in fact, he wrote a book to justify that called Dual Mandate. When we get to lecture period, we'll discuss more on that. Okay, let's see the next question, please. The 1979 Constitution introduced. Now, if you have a little background about constitutional development in Nigeria, you remember that this constitution was promulgated or was constituted by the Murtala Obasanjo military regime. Okay, and this gave back to the Second Republic of Nigeria when we had Alhaji Shehu Shagari as the president. Okay, before this particular time, wow. The next question, the 1979 Constitution introduced unitary government, parliamentary system, presidential system, military rule, confederalism. If you recollect, this constitution gave us the Second Republic of Nigeria. And in that Second Republic, Nigerian government changed from parliamentary system to what? Presidential system of government. And that is why we stopped having prime minister after the military rule of Murtala Obasanjo. We now have what? President, an executive president of Shehu Shagari. So the correct answer is option C, presidential system. Let's see the next question. The pre-colonial Hausa political system was decentralized, theocratic and centralized, republican, acephalous, and federal. If you have a little understanding of pre-colonial administration, the pre-colonial administration was discussed under ATS, African Traditional System. And this African Traditional System was classified into two, centralized traditional system and decentralized traditional system. The Hausa and the Yorubas were centralized system because they have single person as the center, as the head, while the Igbos were decentralized. Okay, so now let's zero it down to Hausa political system. The Hausa political system was centralized and they are theocratic. The word theocratic means that they combine both their religion and politics together. Why? The emir, who was the head, the political administrator, was also the what? The spiritual leader of his people. So theocratic and centralized. The correct option is option B. Let's see the next question. The final court of appeal in Nigeria is, talking about final court of appeal, before 1960, while we're still under colonial administration, the highest court in Nigeria was the Privy Council of England. The Privy Council of England, the Judicial Committee of Privy Council of England. Okay? Although Nigerian Supreme Court was introduced in 1954 Constitution, that's written into Constitution, okay? After the conference in London in 1953 December, okay? But when the Supreme Court was introduced, the Supreme Court was subjected to the authority of the Judiciary Private Committee of England until we became a republic. Even as an independent, when we got independent, our Supreme Court was still not the highest court as an independent in 1960. Until we became a republic in 1963, we now declared that the Nigerian Supreme Court is the highest and the final court of appeal in Nigeria. So there was no need going to private council in London for any appeal. So the final court of appeal in Nigeria is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court. Okay? That's the highest and the final court in Nigeria. As we look at the next question now. Okay? The concept of sovereignty means, I believe you have understanding of this concept, sovereignty. Sovereignty is a political concept, a principle in government that states that a state is independent and free from any external interference. The ability, the supreme power, the authority of a state to control itself and its affairs without fear of external interference is called sovereignty. So what's the meaning now? A, absence of constitution, ability to dominate, supreme authority in a state, dependency on foreign aid, use of military rule. From the explanation I gave to you about sovereignty, the best option here is supreme authority in a state. Supreme authority in a state. Let's see the next question. The legislature in Nigeria is known as. The legislature in Nigeria is known as. Now, you need to understand something here. Now, when we talk about legislature, we have legislature at the federal level, at the state, and also at the local government. Okay? The legislature at the federal level are known as National Assembly because it's made up of both the House of Senate and House of Representatives. Okay? While in the state, they are known as House of Assembly. Please take note. House of Assembly is different from House of Representative at the center. Okay? So the legislature in Nigeria as a country is the National Assembly. The National Assembly. Okay? If you talk about US, they call it the Congress. If you talk about UK, they call it the Parliament. Sometimes in Nigeria, we can also interchange National Assembly for Parliament. But the proper address or title we call Nigeria is the National Assembly, which is made up of both the lower house, House of Representatives, and upper house, House of Senate, because we're operating a bicameral legislature. Let's see, possibly this question might also be the last for us for today. A constitution can be classified based on, when you talk about classification of a constitution, you can look at one, the documentation. Two, you can also look at the amendment process. Documentation and amendment process. When you talk about documentation, we are talking about whether it is written or unwritten. And when we talk about the amendment, we are talking about whether it's flexible or rigid. Okay? So a constitution can be classified based on number of laws, scope of budget, method of enactment, political ideology, number of political parties. From this explanation I just gave to you, is method of enactment. That's the process of documentation, the process of codification of the Constitution is called enactment. Enactment means the process of making it. Is it written in a single document or is it contained in multiple documents? Students, I hope you have enjoyed this class as we went through this NECO past questions in government. And so these questions Majority of them are likely going to come out in your forthcoming NECO exams. Right? To get this and many more, even our lectures, I advise that you subscribe to this channel and enjoy yourself. Thank you.